Are you ready to hear the second half of the infant spirit? Turn the lights down low, slip on your headphones, and listen closely to a chilling tale whispered from the shadows. A true story born in the dark corners of Vietnam.
Ever since Uncle Tone moved in, the house began to feel different. Not in a bad way, just heavier. His presence as a man brought structure, and outside these walls, he was known in the smuggling trade as a man of influence and power. But inside he was calm, collected, even soft-spoken. He even brought someone from his old house to help with chores, so Van and her mother wouldn't have to lift a finger. That someone was an elderly woman, around 65, but still remarkably spry. Her name was Mrs. Land. She arrived the day after Uncle Tone moved in. The first time Van met her, she felt uneasy. There was something in Mrs. Land's eyes, an old, cloudy gaze that sent a subtle chill down her spine. The woman was short, with snow-white hair, wrinkled skin, and dark spots scattered across her face. But she moved with surprising ease, never needing a cane. When she arrived, Uncle Tone said, "This is Mrs. Land from my hometown. She's been working for me the past 3 years. Her family's all gone now, so I let her stay with me. Don't be fooled by her age. She's sharp as ever. From today on, she'll take care of cooking and cleaning for us." Van and her mother were kind-hearted, and hearing about Mrs. Land's lonely background made them feel for her immediately. The old woman smiled at Van and said, "Such a pretty young lady. I had a granddaughter once, about your age now. If she'd lived, poor thing though, foolish decisions. Couldn't save either the mother or the child." Her tone was eerie, like the memories still haunted her. Uncle Tone quickly cut in. "Come now, Mrs. Land. Let's not bring up sad stories from the past. You'll take the guest room downstairs. It's more convenient for you." Van helped carry her bags into a room near the stairwell, a guest room usually reserved for unexpected visitors or drunk uncles on New Year's. Now, it belonged to Mrs. Land. Uncle Tone turned to Van and her mother. "Now that we have help, you two don't have to do anything anymore. Let Mrs. Land handle the housework. And about the room upstairs, the one where my wife loans ashes, please don't enter it without my permission. Mrs. Land knows how to care for the altar. She's done it for years." Van thought he was just being thoughtful, trying to ease their burden. She felt even more grateful. Her mother nodded. "Of course. It's sacred now. It's Lone's resting place. But could you take me up to light incense for her? Yesterday, we were so busy moving in, I forgot." Uncle Tone agreed, and the two of them went upstairs. Van stayed behind in the living room, watching TV. That was when she suddenly felt a chill crawl down her back, like someone was watching her from behind. She turned quickly. Mrs. Land was already standing there. "Would the young lady like anything for dinner? I'm heading to the market soon." Van exhaled, startled. "Oh, you scared me. How long have you been standing there?" The old woman began organizing the cups on the table. Her fingers were gnarled and veiny, the knuckles prominent beneath her papery skin. "Forgive me," she said softly. "You seemed very focused on the show. I didn't want to disturb you." Van laughed nervously. "It's okay, it was a movie's fault. Hey, do you know how to make braised pork leg? I love that dish." Mrs. Land smiled, revealing nearly all her teeth, blackened from years of chewing betel nut, but mostly intact. Of course I do. Upstairs, Uncle Tone and her mother came down, dressed nicely. It looked like they were heading out. "Van, stay home, okay?" her mother said. "Your uncle and I have some things to take care of. We'll be back late. Mrs. Lamb will make dinner for you." The old woman nodded and replied, "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll take care of everything." After they left, Van went back to watching TV, while Mrs. Lamb headed to the market. The market wasn't far, so she walked. Alone in the quiet house, Van lay down on the sofa and dozed off. Van, wake up, sweetheart. Van. Slowly, her eyes opened. She was back in her room, lying on her bed. Surrounding her were her mother, Uncle Tone, and Mrs. Lamb. Her mother sat beside her, gently brushing the hair from her face. "Thank God you're awake. I was so worried. You must have tripped and fainted. It's a good thing Mrs. Lamb heard the noise and ran upstairs." Van tried to speak, to say that she hadn't tripped, that she'd been pulled, that something had grabbed her leg in the dark. Mrs. Lamb spoke up. "It was just after 11. I was sitting in the living room, waiting for the master and mistress to return, when I heard a loud thump upstairs. The rain had stopped by then. I ran up and found her collapsed on the floor. Her leg had caught on the chair. She was unconscious." Van slowly sat up and looked at her. "But the power went out. How did you see me? And I didn't trip over anything. Something grabbed my leg." Mrs. Lamb blinked and looked toward her mother and Uncle Tone. There was no blackout. The lights were still on when I came up. Right when I called out, the master and mistress were coming in the door. Her mother nodded. "We got home at exactly 11. We parked the car in the garage, and the lights were on. Same for the neighbors. You must have blacked out and imagined the power outage. Come, I'll make you some hot milk." Van gripped her mother's hand tightly, refusing to let her leave. She tried to explain about the figure she'd seen in the altar room, about the knocking on her door, the laughing, the thing that grabbed her in the dark. But no one believed her. Uncle Tone turned to Mrs. Lamb. "Did you go into the altar room tonight?" "No," she replied calmly. After Miss Van went upstairs, I closed the windows and locked the door myself. Then I went to my room. I didn't come up until I heard the crash. "I checked just now," Uncle Tone added. "The door to the altar room is still locked." Her mother looked troubled. She turned to Van with concern in her eyes. "Maybe you were just scared being home alone, with the thunder, the wind. It was a stormy night." Van stared at them, heartbroken. She knew what she'd seen, what she'd heard. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't dreaming. There was something in that room, something not human, something tied to that white ceramic jar. From the moment Uncle Tone moved in, everything had changed. She remembered the child's laugh in the rain, the shadow on her chest, the cold fingers touching her face, the blood-colored egg, and now, the thing that had whispered in her ear while she lay paralyzed. But no one believed her. They looked at her like she was fragile, like a broken girl. Uncle Tone sighed. "It's late. Let's all get some rest. She's still shaking. You should stay with her tonight." Her mother agreed and stayed behind while he and Mrs. Lamb returned to their rooms. The bedroom door closed. Now just the two of them remained. Van held her mother tightly and whispered, "Mom, do you believe me? There's a spirit in this house." Her mother stroked her hair gently. "I believe you, sweetheart. I don't really believe in ghosts, I don't dismiss them either. After your father died, I used to dream of him standing in our room, just watching us sleep and then disappearing. Van looked up. Did he look the same as before? Her mother held her closer. He was sad. He missed us, just like we missed him. But no matter what, he was still your father, and he's still watching over you. So you don't have to be afraid anymore. Not of anything. Her mother's warmth wrapped around her like a blanket, and Van drifted off to sleep, clinging to that one fragile comfort. Almost 4 months passed. Everything returned to normal. The dream stopped. The whispers went silent. Until today. Uncle Tone had just returned from a business trip. Van was sitting in the living room when he walked in. She greeted him. He didn't respond. He went straight upstairs to her mother's room. Moments later, shouting, angry, violent, Van rushed upstairs. What she saw stopped her cold. Uncle Tone had her mother by the hair, slapping her, over and over, shouting profanities. Van screamed, "Why are you hitting her? Stop." She tried to run forward, but something invisible slammed into her, shoving her back. Her mouth opened to shout again, but no sound came out. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. She sat frozen, watching her mother being beaten, unable to do anything. Uncle Tone was in a frenzy now, like a wild animal. He kicked her in the stomach. He stomped on her head. He cursed. "You filthy whore. While I'm working, you dress up and go see your lovers." He didn't wait for an answer. His rage turned manic. "You're useless. Can't even bear a child. You deserve to die." But then he turned, not toward Van, not toward her mother. He seemed to be talking to someone else, someone unseen. "You're the only one who truly belongs to me. Only you." Van's heart dropped. This wasn't just madness. Something else was in the room. A voice. A child's voice.
"She can carry your child. Daddy."
Van felt it before she saw it. A small figure, naked, pale, eyes glowing red, perched on her shoulder. It leaned in, whispering into her ear, "You can't stop this." And then the nightmare began. Uncle Tone approached her slowly, breathing heavily. His eyes were wild. He reached out, lifted her effortlessly, carried her to the bed. Van couldn't move, couldn't fight back. She was paralyzed. He tore her shirt, exposing her. He whispered things she couldn't bear to hear. Only you can carry my child." And then he raped her, right there on that bed, while her mother lay bruised and broken on the floor. When he was done, he dressed and left the room without a word. Van still couldn't move. Her body lay limp, her soul shattered. Her mother had woken. She had seen everything. And just like her daughter, she, too, had been unable to move. The two of them cried silently, unable to speak, unable to process what had happened. Her mother dragged herself to bed, wrapped a blanket around Van, and held her tightly. The bed sheet was stained red. Her voice trembling, Van whispered, "He's not human. He's a monster. What are we going to do, Mom?" Back in the present, Van sat in front of Mrs. Muon, her eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Muon took her hand and said, "That's enough for today. You need to rest. But in 3 days, I want you to come back and tell me the rest, especially about the object inside the white ceramic jar. You still have it, don't you?" Van nodded silently. Mrs. Muon turned to Mr. Nam. "Go get the old brown wooden box from the cabinet." When he returned, she opened it and pulled out a red thread bracelet. Attached was a tiny glass vial with a golden root inside. "This will protect you temporarily. Wear it. Don't take it off. For 7 days, the spirit won't be able to harm you. But after 3 days, you must return here and tell me everything." She also gave Anne a 5-color cloth. "When you go home, cover the jar with this. Continue to feed it blood daily, just a drop. Leave out toys. Share your meals. Whether it's a spirit or a demon, it's still a child. Don't even think about ending your life again. It won't let you die. Once you fed it your blood, you became its new master. And if you die, it dies too. That's why it's keeping you alive." As Van left, Mrs. Muon followed her to the door and took back the black stone bracelet, then bowed to them and stepped outside with her aunt. I sat there in silence, stunned by what I had just heard. When it was just the 3 of us left, I finally asked, "Was that girl really possessed?" Mrs. Muon returned the objects to their places. She wasn't possessed. It was a pact, a spiritual contract between her and the spirit parasite. That's why she can't die, because if she dies, it dies, and it won't let that happen. I asked again, "But after all that, why didn't she call police? Why didn't anyone help her?" Mrs. Muon frowned at me. "You still don't understand. If she can't die from suicide, what makes you think the police can help her? Some things in this world can't be explained, only experienced." I shut up after that. Mrs. Muon turned to Mr. Nam. "No more clients this month. That girl, she suffered enough. And I'm afraid she's not the only one who's been marked. If she comes back in 3 days, we'll need to visit my father." "Her father?" I looked at Mr. Nam, confused. "Wait. Your wife's father's still alive." Mr. Nam gave me a sharp flick on the forehead. "He's the old man I told you about, the one who's nearly 90. That's when it hit me. Mr. Nam had married the daughter of a spirit master, and everything was just beginning. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had heard. I went home and searched online for anything related to infant spirit parasites. Most of the results pointed to Kumintong, a well-known Thai occult practice involving wooden child figurines. But those didn't quite match. Kumintong weren't fed with blood. They were more like luck charms and malevolent spirits. What Van was dealing with was something much darker. I visited Mr. Nam's house every day after that, worried that Van might return sooner than expected. But just as Mrs. Muon had predicted, she showed up exactly on the 3rd day, and something about her had changed. Her skin no longer looked pale. It had regained color. Her once hollow eyes now sparkled, though a soft sadness still lingered within them. Her hair was tied back, revealing her graceful neckline, and she wore a soft pink dress. The transformation was subtle, but striking. I must have stared too long, because Vin shot me a quick glare that made me look away, flustered. She stood at the door, hesitant. Mrs. Muon had already set up the ritual items, incense burning gently in the air. "Come in," she said. "You've covered the jar with the 5-color cloth I gave you, haven't you?" Van nodded and stepped in, taking the same seat as before. Mrs. Muon studied her for a moment, then spoke. "You look better, but this is just a temporary measure. If you want peace, we still have to remove it from you. Give me your hand." Just like before, she brought out a hard-boiled egg, peeled it, and began rolling it gently along Van's left forearm. Once done, she placed it back into a small wooden box, sealed it, and asked, "Have you slept better these past 3 nights? I waited until today because your body was too weak. Pressing you for the past too soon could have broken you even more." Van looked at her with gratitude. "These past 3 nights, I've had the best sleep in years. I still see it, but it no longer glares at me with those twisted eyes. It just looked at me and said, 'Why have you changed like this?'" I didn't answer. Mrs. Muon nodded solemnly. "The cloth calms wandering spirits, and by feeding it, acknowledging it, you've quieted its rage, even if only for now. As long as you stop thinking about death, there's always hope." She pulled the egg back out and broke it in half. I couldn't help but brace myself, expecting blood red again. But this time, the yolk wasn't red. It was pitch black, a dark ashen gray. Mrs. Muon frowned. "Black. That means your connection with the spirit is still strong. Better than blood red, yes, but still dangerous. When the egg comes out clean, only then are you truly free." She turned to Mr. Nam. "Burn it like last time. Make sure no animal touches it, or we'll bring another curse into this house." Watching all this unfold, I didn't dare speak. If I didn't know them personally, I would have sworn this was all some elaborate trick. But no, what I saw, what I felt, it was all real. Then Mrs. Muon leaned forward, her voice softer. "You're stronger now. Can you tell me the rest? Take your time. There's no rush today. I'm listening." Van was silent for a long moment. Then, with trembling lips, she began again. After the rape, Van wanted nothing more than to scream, to call the police, to call anyone. But her phone slipped from her hands. She couldn't dial. She couldn't speak. Whenever she tried to mention Uncle Tone, her voice vanished. No one could hear her, or she physically couldn't open her mouth. Her mother was fading too. Since that day, she barely ate, barely spoke. She stayed in her room, staring into space. And every time she looked at Van, she'd start crying. Uncle Tone had ordered Mrs. Land to care for her mother. He, meanwhile, no longer bothered to hide his obsession with the altar room. He would go in there every single day, for at least half an hour. Sometimes he left the door open, and Van would see him inside, sitting cross-legged, whispering to no one. Sometimes he begged, asking someone or something to help him with his business. And then he'd turn and see her, that lifeless smile, that hollow stare. He was no longer a man. He was a puppet for something darker, and his violence only escalated. He beat her mother more and more, and when he tired of that, he would come for Van, over and over. At first, she fought. Even when she couldn't move, her mind resisted. But eventually, she stopped. She gave in. She was no longer a person. She was his toy, a body, ruled by a demon that wore a human face. And all of it was witnessed. Mrs. Land saw everything, but never once did she speak. Then came a rare moment. Uncle Tone left for 2 days. It should have been a relief, but for Van it was worse, because now she could think. She drifted downstairs like a ghost, wandering into the kitchen. She took a knife, held it to her wrist, prepared to end it all. But the thought of her mother, battered and helpless upstairs, made her hesitate. That's when a bony, wrinkled hand grabbed her wrist. "Don't, please don't do it. Child, I care about you more than you know." It was Mrs. Land. Van collapsed into her arms and sobbed like a child. And for the first time, Mrs. Land spoke. "Forgive me. I couldn't stop him. I couldn't help your mother. But maybe now I can tell you the truth." They sat in her room, and Van listened. "Do you know what's inside that jar?" Mrs. Land asked. "No," Van whispered. "I only know it's where Uncle Tone keeps his late wife's ashes." "It's not ashes," she said, voice trembling. "And that woman wasn't just anyone. She was my daughter." The room fell silent, and then she told her story. Years ago, her daughter Lone married Tone. At first, everything was blissful, but after a year of trying, they still had no children. They visited doctors, temples, spiritualists. Nothing worked. Eventually, Lone brought her mother to live with them. One day, Tone returned from a business trip to China, carrying a white ceramic jar with red cloth tied over the top. "It's a blessing jar," he said. "A fortune charm from a powerful master. With this, we'll have a child by year's end." He gave the jar its own altar room. Every day, he'd place toys, candy, and food next to it. Even at dinner, he'd prepare a fourth setting for it. Once, Mrs. Land saw him pricking his finger and dripping blood into the jar, and when she tried to open it, he screamed at her. No one but him was allowed to touch it. He grew irritable, withdrawn, obsessed. He spent long hours alone with the jar, talking to it, laughing. Then one day he came home with a piece of paper, his face red with rage. He ran upstairs, yelling at Lone. They fought. Then he struck her. Then he pushed her. Mrs. Land saw it from the garden. Her daughter, falling from the third floor. "My child!" She screamed and blacked out. When she awoke, the police were at the house. Lone was dead. Tone told them she had jumped. "I wasn't even home," he claimed. Mother was asleep. She must have taken her own life. Mrs. Land tried to speak, tried to tell the truth, but no sound came out. Something had sealed her throat. The police ruled it suicide, blaming depression and infertility. At the funeral, Tone wept as if he were the one in mourning. But Mrs. Land knew the truth, and no one believed her. She cried until her eyes dried. She tried to gesture, to explain, but no one understood. Then one day, she found it, Lone's hospital report. Tone wasn't just a murderer. He was infertile. Lone must have discovered the truth, and that's why he killed her. But when she confronted him, Tone appeared with a terrifying presence. Not alone. In his arms, he held a naked child. No hair, glowing red eyes. The child turned its face to her and grinned. Without moving its lips, she heard it whisper in her mind, "I'll make her obey." Then Tone spoke. "If you ever speak of this, not just you, your whole family will die." She was too frightened to move. Then the voice again. I told Daddy to kill her. Daddy belongs to me." Back in the room, Mrs. Land was crying now. "I'm sorry, child. I should have told you sooner, but I couldn't." Van was crying too. She didn't blame her. "Why now?" she asked. Why are you able to speak about this to me, but no one else? Because we are under the same roof, and because my second daughter, your cousin, just died in an accident yesterday. Pregnant. She lost a baby. The curse has claimed her too. Suddenly, they heard a voice. Van! Sweetheart, were you? It was Van's mother. She ran outside. No one was there. Just silence. Then bang! The door slammed shut behind her. Van screamed and tried to open it, but it was sealed. Inside, she could hear Mrs. Land gasping, furniture crashing. Panic. No, please stop. I'm begging you. Suddenly, the door flew open. Van stumbled in and found Mrs. Land slumped in a chair, face pale, tongue hanging from her mouth, eyes rolled back. She was dead, as if someone had choked the life out of her. And then, that laugh, it echoed through the house, bouncing from wall to wall. Van covered her ears, but the sound was inside her head, not her ears. Then, the door creaked. Uncle Tone stepped inside, but he wasn't supposed to be back yet. He looked at Mrs. Land's body, didn't flinch. The police ruled it a heart attack. Another tragedy. The house, once suffocating, was now truly haunted. And Van knew if they stayed any longer, she and her mother would be next. The death of Mrs. Land shattered Van's last threads of strength. But for her mother's sake, she forced herself to survive. Barely. Yet a woman who was already dead inside could not outrun the hand of death for long. 1 month after Mrs. Land passed, Van's mother slipped into a deeper darkness. She stopped eating, stopped speaking. Her once elegant figure became gaunt, her skin pale and almost translucent. Whenever she looked at Van, she would cry and cry, as if her soul had rotted from the inside out. People said it was psychological trauma, a complete mental breakdown. But Van knew. She knew what had broken her mother. To the outside world, Tone was a model husband, kind, devoted, desperate to find the best doctors and medicine to help his beloved, broken wife. He even installed security cameras in her room, showing footage of her harming herself, scratching her skin, banging her head against the wall. And when questioned, he would sigh and say, "I just needed to monitor her while I'm away, in case anything bad happens." The footage made the doctors believe her wounds were self-inflicted, that she was insane. But Van knew the truth, and that truth was killing her. That night, while trying to get her mother to drink some water, Van broke. She dropped the glass, held her mother close, and screamed. Her mother died in her arms, but there was peace in her face, a faint smile, as if she had finally escaped. Her fingers, frail and cold, still clung to Van's hand. The funeral was beautiful, lavish, full of tears, and Tone, once again, was the perfect grieving husband. Just like Mrs. Land had said, just like when Lone died, he cried as if his soul were being ripped apart. And Van showed nothing. No tears, no words, no visible pain. Just a cold, hollow stare as she stood before her mother's photo. No one knew she had cried blood the night her mother died. No one knew her heart had turned to stone. There was nothing left for her in this world except vengeance. From the ashes of sorrow, something began to awaken within Van. Something no longer afraid. She would live. She had to live. To know what she was fighting. To know what she had become. Tone would pay. He would pay in blood. That night, after her mother's burial, Tone came into her room again, as always, but this time Van didn't resist. She moved toward him. She smiled. She wanted him. Or at least, she made him believe that. Her body, her voice, her touch, everything he desired, was now willingly his. And like a dog offered meat, he devoured her. When it was over, as they lay in bed, he stroked her hair and asked, "Why the change, darling?" Van pressed her face to his shoulder and whispered, "You're all I have now. If you're not happy, I don't want to go on living. I belong to you." Tone beamed with pride. He kissed her, held her tighter. He had no idea what had just taken root in his bed. The next morning, while he still slept, Van slipped out of the room. She pulled on a loose white shirt and walked barefoot through the dark, silent house. As she passed the altar room, she heard it again, that voice. "Come in, why won't you ever come in?" She turned the doorknob. It moved on its own. Click. The door opened by itself. A gust of cold air hit her face. Inside, the candles were already lit. A soft voice echoed from the white ceramic jar. "Don't you want to know who I am?" Van stepped inside. For the first time since Tone brought her home, she entered the room willingly. The door slammed shut behind her. "Good, now come closer." She walked to the altar, to the jar. Next to it stood an ornate mirror with a gold-trimmed wooden frame, intricately carved with serpents and vines. Sit in front of the mirror and look. We'll see each other there." The voice, though childlike, was drenched in something unnatural. It pulled her in. She obeyed. She sat. She stared. At first, nothing. Then the candlelight flared. Shadows danced. And she saw it. In the reflection, there she was, sitting, but on her shoulder was a child. Naked, bald, skin like wet porcelain, eyes red as blood. It stared directly into the mirror, directly into her soul. It smiled. She turned to look over her shoulder. No one was there, but in the mirror it remained. The child leaned toward her ear and whispered, "I am a little demon. Will you play with me?" Van's body trembled. She had thought she had nothing left to fear. But now she knew. She had never truly known terror. She turned away from the mirror. "Why won't you answer me? Mommy?" Her blood froze. It called her mommy. She leapt to her feet and ran to the door. It wouldn't open. "Mommy, do you love me? I'll do anything for you if you play with me." Van stammered.
Oh, okay.
"I'm so happy." The door flung open. Van ran. She slammed it shut behind her and bolted upstairs, straight into Tone, who was stepping out his room. "Where were you off to this early?" he asked. Still shaking, Van replied, I just went to the bathroom. There was a cockroach." Tone laughed and took her hand. "With me here, nothing can hurt you." She smiled, a soft, dead smile. And he didn't know. He couldn't know that death was already in the house, and it had chosen him next. They say curiosity killed the cat, but in this house, curiosity does far worse. It was now 1 week since Ren had entered the forbidden room, since she stared into that gilded mirror carved with grotesque, ancient symbols. And ever since, she played her role well, seducing Tone, questioning him, learning more with each night of twisted intimacy. What's inside the jar, Duong? Is it really DeLone's ashes? Tone stiffened, just a flicker. But then came the same rehearse lie. Yes, her spirit couldn't rest. She carried too much pain when she died. I asked a monk to prepare a spell. It's sealed inside to bring her peace. If it's open, she might never be reborn. So never touch it. Liar. But Van kept the mask on. Then why do you leave toys beside it? For a woman who died without children. Tone smiled sadly as if his soul still ached. She always wanted a child. The toys are for her spirit. It's silly, I know. Why the sudden questions? He asked suspiciously. Van wanted to scream. Because there's a child in this house, naked, eyeless, laughing, and it called me mother. But she didn't. She smiled, pouted. Just trying to know you better. We're all we have now, aren't we? Tone grinned and took the bait. That night, at 11 p.m., he said he'd be away the next day for business. Van nodded, pretending to sleep beside him, but she didn't sleep. She never did anymore. She waited, breathing in silence, then reached on the bed and pulled out the kitchen knife she had hidden 3 days earlier. The blade caught the moonlight, gleaming cold and eager. Tone snored beside her, oblivious. She sat up, raised a knife, and then, Mommy, you can't do that. That's my daddy. She froze. Hovering above her, pale and weightless, was a child, the little demon. It held her arm gently, but the power in its touch was paralyzing. She dropped the knife. Tone stirred. She shoved the blade back on the bed and lay still. I can't kill him, she thought, not while it's still here. 5 minutes passed. She opened her eyes. It was still there, perched on her chest, staring with those red eyes. She turned her head. It was now beside her, smiling, waiting. She yanked the blanket over her head. Why do you want to kill Dad? It whispered. The voice was confused, childlike. And then she remembered what it had said in the mirror. If you play with me, I'll help you. She slipped out of bed, her heart pounding. The house was dark, suffocating. The hallway felt like a tunnel to the underworld. Outside the window, an owl shrieked. When an owl cries at night, someone in the house will die, her mother used to say. She reached the window. Nothing moved. The trees were still, the night air heavy. Then, thump. Something slammed into the glass. A fresh red streak began to slide down the pane. Blood. Van didn't wait. She ran. Down the stairs. Toward the altar room. The hallway lights didn't come on. The door to the forbidden room creaked open on its own. Hi, are you coming in, Mommy? She didn't hesitate. She entered and closed the door behind her. In the mirror, her reflection was smiling. Its eyes glowed red. Hi, Mommy. Van shivered. You were looking for me, right? The mirror was the only source of light now, glowing faintly, pulsing. She approached the jar. Do you want to open it? She nodded. Her hands trembled. She untied the red cloth lid. 1 twist, 2, 3. Inside was black. A small statue? No, not a statue. She reached in. Lightning exploded outside the window. Wind howled. Curtains flew up, though the windows were locked. She looked down. In her arms was a baby, a dead baby. Blood still slicked its body. Its limbs were stiff and curled like a dried root. She nearly dropped it, but she didn't. In the mirror, nothing. No reflection, only darkness. She quickly shoved the tiny corpse back into the jar and sealed the cloth over it again. Will you play with me, Mommy? Her voice was barely a whisper. I will, but you have to help me. I'll help you do anything. Candles burst into flame all around her. She placed the jar back on the altar. Still no reflection in the mirror. I want Tone to die, she said, and I want to hurt. Okay, then feed me your blood. She found the cloth bundle beside the jar, unwrapped it, a long pin. She remembered this. Tone had used it. She'd seen him prick his finger, feed the jar. Now it was her turn. 3 drops of blood. It perched on her shoulder again. No mirror needed. She could feel it. Its tiny cold fingers brushed her cheek. Now I'm yours, Mommy. Feed me every day. And then, gone. Only the whisper remained.
I'll do what you ask.
The room fell dark again. The storm outside had stopped. All was still. She returned to her room. Tone was snoring. It was 1 a.m. Van lay beside him, eyes open, heart racing. And when she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of blood and silence. End of part 2.